Okay, so this is part three of Modim. We're gonna start by reviewing last time, okay, as best as we can, and then we're gonna change plans. Okay. Isaiah's not here in person. There you go. All right. Uh okay, so let's just review the translation again, just because it's good to start off with baseline translation. So I think I included my translation on there. Yeah. Okay. I may have changed a little here or there. Modim anachnu lach. We gratefully acknowledge you, which is my combo of thank and acknowledge. Sha'atahu Hashem Elokeinu. For you are Hashem, our God, Hashem Elokeinu, V'Elokei Avosenu, and God of our forefathers. Le'olam va'ed, forever and ever. Tsur Chayinu, the rock or quarry or stronghold of our lives. Magini Shenu Atahu, the shield of our salvation you are. L'dor v'dor noda lacha, from generation to generation we will gratefully acknowledge you. Unasaprti lasacha, and recount your praises. Al chayinu hamisrim bi'adecha, for our lives that are given over into your hands. V'al nishmosena hapkudos lach, and for our souls that are entrusted to you. V'al nisacha sheb'chol yom imanu, and for your miracles or banners or trials. V'tovosacha, and your good things, your acts of goodness. Sheb'chol es, that are at all times, evening and morning and afternoon. The hatov kilo chalu rachamecha, the good one, for your mercies have not been exhausted. V'hamarachem, the merciful one, kilo samu chasadecha, because your kindnesses have not ceased or been depleted. Me'olam kivinu lach, forever we have hoped in you. V'al kulam, and for all of them, yisparach v'yisramam shimcha malkeinu tami l'lamed, your name will be blessed and exalted, Malkeinu Tamid Limit, our King, constantly forever and ever. B'chol HaChaim, and all the living, Yoducha, will gratefully acknowledge you, Selah. However you translate Selah. V'halu es shimcha be'emes, and they will praise your name in truth. Hakel Yeshuaseinu ve'ezraseinu Selah, the God of our salvation and our assistance, Selah. Baruch atah Hashem, you Hashem are the source of blessing. Hatov Shimcha, the good is your name. U'lecha na'il hodas, and to you it is fitting to gratefully acknowledge. Okay, so the highlight on the screen here is we went through last time the three old nuschos, the Nusach Eretz Yisrael from Israel, so 7th and 8th centuries, I think, and then Sadigon, and then the Rambam, and we tried to identify what the core elements are. Now I can say it because I give the shiur on Friday. So the shift in my view of nusach is that there was no original nusach that was word for word. It was just the inyan of the bracha and certain phrases that Chazal identified, and usually something in the chasima or the start, but all the middle was left up to people to compose on their own. And obviously, various traditions formed, and in some cases, we know where they came from. In some cases, we don't. But that's really that's what we mean by the nusach, is just the inyan of the bracha. But that's why, for example, now I can say it out loud, that's why in this old version of Modim, it's virtually not at all similar to the version that we're used to, right? So you got Modim Nakalach who Hashem Elokeinu V'Elokei Avosenu, so that part's the same. Then just Al Kol HaTovos V'Hachesed V'Harachamim Shegamalasnu V'Sha Asisa Imanu V'Ima Avosenu Milafanim V'Ima Marnu Mate Ragleinu Chasadecha Hashem Yisadenu. And then Baruch Hashem HaTov Ulchana Elohodos. Okay, so what I have highlighted in the yellow here, that's like the core. Okay, Modim Nachnu Lach Shatahu Hashem Elokeinu. And then Baruch atah Hashem Hatov Shimcha L'chana Elohodos. Even that end part is not necessarily unanimous among the different versions. Okay, but that's the core there. Okay, so that's what we're working on. And the shift in what we're going to do today is the original plan was going to be to do the Abudarham on all of the phrases in our Modim and see where they come from and then get a big picture. But what we're going to do instead is Ken and I ended up working out a thing on the one piece from the Abudarham we didn't do last time. And I think if you do that and the chasima, then it opens the whole Modim. Okay, so that's the goal here. Okay, so let's review what we did the Abudarham last time. Abudarham, which is not in your source sheet, up here, had 4 points, and we did points 1, 2, and 4. Okay, so we'll read it again. Modim nachnu lach milashon ach tzadikim yodu lishmecha. The phrase Modim nachnu lach derives from the phrase only tzaddikim will gratefully acknowledge your name, and that's from Tehillim 140:14. So we went through this parak, and we saw, first of all, this is not a very thanky parak. It's a very, I'm being attacked, I'm David and I'm being attacked by people parak, okay? And then the strangest thing was at the end, it says only the tzaddikim will gravely acknowledge your name. Whereas in Modim, it sounds like everyone's acknowledging your name because we say Modim anachnu lach, and then v'chol hachayim yuducha sela. So we analyzed that and we came up with different ideas. And what the takeaway that I came away with, if you had different things or different ideas, then that's fine. I listed them here. I'm not going to read all of them. Is that ideally, so modim does not just mean thank. It means to acknowledge, which is from the word knowledge, like to seek Yedias Hashem. Okay, and that's why the emphasis in the end of the bracha is on shimcha. We have a triple shimcha. You have al kulam yisbrach v'yisram shimcha. Malkinu tamila lemved v'cholacham yeducha sala v'hal shimcha be'emes hakol yishur Hashem v'zosenu b'rachat Hashem hatov shimcha l'chanei lo. Shem Hashem is always Yedias Hashem, and only tzaddikim are capable of doing a real hodah, okay, because they have Yedias Hashem and they embody the values of Hashem in terms of chesed, tzedakah, and mishpat, okay? So then how can we say modim anachnu lach? So when we say it, we're saying it aspirationally. We are trying to include ourselves in that group of tzaddikim and saying we are trying to get to the point where we can say modim anachnu lach, but we might not be there yet. So we said that it's not the thank you that a kid says when you give them a cookie, which is just like, I got good, and social conventions say I show that I recognize the good. No, it's recognizing Hashem and that the good comes from Hashem. Okay, so like that's something that the tzaddikim could do. So that was our first basic idea. Okay, second idea was a short one, which is that the Ibn Hayarchi says that modim is an allusion to the Aramaic translation of the Hebrew word mishtachaveh, which means to bow down. So what I wanted to say, so it's not, modim doesn't mean bow down, but it alludes to it. So what I wanted to say is that Judaism's philosophy of thanks is threefold, and it's three levels. Oh, I always forget to tell you to remember. Yeah. It is threefold. One is just recognizing that the good did not come from you. That's the basic level. That's what we call thanks. Okay. Then there's seeking knowledge of the source of the good. That's Hodah in terms of like being maskim and modeh and not kofar. And then the final level is a subjugation of the self to the source of all the good, because you were totally dependent on God. So that's represented in mishtachaveh. So when you say the phrase modim anachnu lach and bow, that's the triple kavanah you should have, is that the good comes from God. I acknowledge and seek knowledge of God as the source of good, and I bow down to Him, and I'm totally indebted to Him. I subordinate myself to Him and to His will. So it's like a nice idea, all in the modim anachnu lach. All right, so that's a review of the second point. You can stop me, by the way, if you have questions. Okay, and then the third point, the fourth point, which was the last one we did, is the gematria point. I forgot to ask Rabbi Fader about this. Yeah.
When you say truth as seeking truth as the second translation from modim, is it the specific truth of seeking truth within the good that God does to you, or truth in general?
Truth of God in general, but you're doing it via the recognition of how the good comes to you. So let's say, for example, when you say, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, borei pri ha'etz, right? So you're recognizing, you start off with a good, which is this fruit, okay? And so you recognize, first step is recognize that, first step is like, I didn't make this fruit, right? Like this fruit is coming to me from outside of myself. Then you're recognizing this comes from God as the borei of eitzim that are osed piri, and that this is part of an entire ecosystem, and that's part of Hazan as olam kulo betuvo posech hasyakom maspil chol chayratzon, einei chol elach yisaberu, and recognizing how the good that you're receiving comes from the borei, right? So that's seeking knowledge of God, and then the implication is I subordinate myself to God, and I am totally really. It's not like I choose to subordinate myself to God. That is true, but I am totally dependent on God. That's expressed in Hishtachavaya. I mean, I know you're not doing Hishtachavaya, but yeah.
You say the word modim means bow down?
So it's funny. So the Ibn Hayarchi says that modim means bow down because the Targum of the Hishtachaveh is umodina, but then this Rav Wertheimer says he doesn't really mean that the translation of modim is to bow down. He just means that the words are related in Aramaic, and that's a description of what you're doing when you say modim.
Secondary question.
Yeah.
That, the action of bowing down, that's like an super old thing apparently?
Yeah.
You know when that originated?
I mean, mashma that was part of the halachos instituted by Ezra and the Aşknaz Hagdola, that you bow 5 times at the Shemona Esrei, beginning and ending of the first bracha, beginning and end of Modim, and at the end of the Shemona Esrei.
Right.
Yeah, I think that was from them. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know if there was another trajectory of the history there. Okay. So then the last point was, he says, "V'timsa ki modim ola leminyan mea." Modim in gematria is 100. To allude to the fact that we thank God 100 with 100 brachos every day, right? Okay, so the question is, why is the Abudarham, whose job is to trace tefilah back to its sources, throwing in this random halacha of 100 brachos with gematria? You know, so what I theorized was that if you think that you can develop, if you think that you can give Hodah to God by saying Modim, then you're wrong. Okay. You need to cultivate the midah of Hakaras Tov and Hodah, and that needs to be part of your every moment of your life. So you're saying brachos of Hodah all day long, and then in Modim, you are formally saying it after doing your bakashos, you know, but you don't just, it's not like there are certain things that, you know, you say a particular shevach on a particular thing, and you can like recognize that. But Hodah is something you have to like cultivate, and that's through the institution of the kind of 100 brachos and the halacha to say 100 brachos a day. So, so it really is, I think it's an important thing to recognize, because again, everyone wants to have kavanah when they daven, but not everyone wants to do all the work. And the work is having kavanah in the brachos that you say when you say them to the extent possible, you know? So that's the end of the review. Okay. Any questions or new observations here before we start the new stuff? Okay, so now we get to this troubling portion here. Okay, so the Abudarham says, "V'amrinim b'Beraşit Rabbah." I guess for us is the Tanchuma. "Ilo she'ol todeka," for the grave does not thank you, it does not acknowledge you. Okay, umihu modeh, who does gratefully acknowledge you? Mishu chai umishtachava lechei ha'olamim, the one who is alive and bows to like a living being, and the one who bows down to the life of worlds. Shekin ksiv, as it's written in the next passage, chai chai hu yodecha, the living one, he thanks you, he gratefully acknowledges you. And that's why it says at the end, "V'chol hachaim yoducha sala," all the living will gratefully acknowledge you. Lefisha anu chaim v'ata chai modim anachnu lach. Since we are alive and you're alive, then we gratefully acknowledge you. Okay, so first of all, just a clarification here. I said this last time, I want to say it again. I don't know about you, but when I have said "V'chol hachaim yoducha sala" all this time, all the living gratefully acknowledge you, I think it means in the sense of Tehillim, like all the creation praises you, you know, like the trees and the animals and all this stuff. That's not how he's learning it. Okay, that's true in Tehillim that we say, you know, all the trees praise you, but this is saying that it means the living and not the dead. Thank you. Okay, so if you're dead, you can't thank God, but if you're alive, then you thank God. And then the other thing I would say, and I threw out this challenge last time, but I didn't look into it further, is I think it's possible, my theory right now is only human beings can do Hodah. Okay, I don't think angels can do Hodah, and animals can't do Hodah. Okay, yeah, all right, but that remains to be seen. Okay, so the question that we asked is, we asked 2 questions. Where are they? Yeah, what is this idea that living beings thank the living God? So this is what I refer to as AKA the matchy idea. Okay, and that's the childish way of saying the idea we want to get away from. Like if you just read it superficially, like, oh, we're alive and God's alive and we thank him. You know, there's clearly an idea there though, right? So what is this matchy idea? And then in order to get to that, we have to get to the question of what does it mean that God is living? Okay, that was the step that we suggested last time that we need to do. One more set of facts here is just look at the context of where these psukim come from. So this is Yeshayahu. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but Chizkiyahu was sick, and then he recovered. And so he said, actually, I will read it again. It's not that long. I had said to myself, with my days cut short, I will go to the gates of the grave, deprived of the rest of my years. I had said, I will not see God. God is in the land of the living. I think that's another pasuk, even though Abudarham doesn't quote it, meaning only the living can recognize God. I will not again behold a man with the inhabitants of the earth. Okay, then he describes his, I won't read it. He describes his sickness. Okay, and then God says that you're going to live. And then he healed him. And then he says, for the grave cannot gratefully acknowledge you, nor can death laud you. Those who descend to the pit cannot hope for your truth. A living person, he shall gratefully acknowledge you as I do today. Okay, so that's the source of this idea that the living being is Modim Mishtachve to the living God. And since we're alive, then we thank the living God. So the question is, what's that idea? Okay, ideas?
I think grave sounds a little bit like the Mishnah.
I know, I was thinking that, yeah. Sheol, lo Sheol to, yeah, it's negative Hashem. Yeah.
I mean, not an idea.
Sure.
I also, at the risk of complicating things even further.
That's fine. Yeah.
But I know that the only other phrase I can think of would say God is living is Elohim Chayim.
Yeah.
And
I don't know where that phrase comes from. I know Chazal comes from. I don't know if they're referencing a pasuk. Is there a pasuk that says Elohim Chayim? There's got to be, right? But go on.
Yeah, well, I don't know. So that's just calling to mind. I don't know. Like when I think of that, I think of like God as being like dynamic and stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Good. All right. Okay. So, let's just see here. I got to do Lefiha Seder, and then distance of 1. Nope. Those are not the right words. What am I missing here? In order, I guess, let's just do this. Elokim Chaim, yeah. Kichol michol basar asher yishama kol Elokim Chaim. Is that's not? Is that Elokim? That's Elokim Chaim, right? Yeah, Elokim Chaim. Yeah, that does work. Yeah. Okay, fine. So that's the only time in Chumash it says it. Elokim Chaim. Who has heard the words of the living God? Yeah. Okay, fine. So we can look there if we need to. Yeah. Okay. So what do we? So you're saying it means dynamic.
That's at least the
way it sounds there.
Over there. I don't know
right.
how that translates.
Right. Yeah.
Well, mentioned before that I'll not be with God, he's in the land of the living.
Yeah.
And doing genocide is the metaphor for
Olam Haba. Yeah. So the problem, I that was my thought also. And then I looked at Yeshayahu, and this is not like a refutation, but it's just a wrinkle. Yeshayahu, where is it? 38. Yeshayahu 38. Land, wait, is it 38 or am I? Yeah, 38:9. Okay, no, 38. Amarti lo ere ka be'eretz hachayim. So was it Metzudos who gave Pshat? Ratzon rabazeh olam ki amus ve'elach mimeno. So I think, so is because I'm in this world, because I'm going to die and then I'll be gone. So I think Pshat wise, I think you have to say that, because the whole thrust of it is, I thought I wasn't going to be able to see God anymore. And if it's Olam Haba, then that means when he dies, he can see God, you know?
Or no, I mean, maybe that's interesting, but it's like he won't see God in Olam Haba because he's like
that could be. That could be. I did not see, I don't recall. I mean, well, he certainly has to be a sinner enough to get this punishment.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that could be. All right, that's possible. I've not learned through this pair. Yeah, Tamar?
Okay, so I'm just gonna give an association to you, but I feel like there's like a question about
Tamar, I think whoever is talking near you, I'm hearing them more than I'm hearing you. So sorry about that.
Okay, I'm on the screen. I'll put something in the chat.
Okay, all right. I'll stay looking for the chat. Sorry. Yeah, Moshe.
Just thinking of where else in liturgy we say that, right? It's part of Baruch Shemar and Yishtabach, and it's also towards the bunch of praises that we say before Gal Yisrael, right? Melech Kel Chai V'Kayam.
Yeah. See, I think Kel Chai V'Kayam, that was my first go-to. Yeah.
And Prasadigon also really does mimic the pasuk, the MS, we do Fasila the MS, Fe Fi Ha'olamim, which is the Messiah also mentions they cannot hope for your truth.
Right. So Sadigon here, Moshe is saying, Kol Chaim Yodu Chasela Be'emes Chei Ha'olamim, life of worlds. And so it is making this connection explicit, right? The living, thank the living,
right,
of life of worlds.
And
yeah.
He doesn't have Kivinu, but there's also Kivinu, like the Kivinu is also mentioned in the pasuk, and as well as right? They'll be a lot, right? Whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever that is. So I guess that's much more of a no, but I guess expounding on what he said in terms of it being a dynamic thing, the act of thinking, the act of thinking someone has to be, I guess in this case, sort of for the same reason that we
Oh,
think
sorry.
about Sufism around.
I just realized I don't have the microphone. Yeah, keep going.
The same reason, for the same reason we say Sufism every day, right? It's for the, because it's every day we experience Catholics, hundreds that thank God for, and we can't say, oh well, I did it yesterday, only one or two new things happened today. Why would I have to do it again? And I think the point here is that thanks, and I've got the phrase, but thanks demands a continuous dynamic thing towards, and specifically from existences who experience, or because they are alive,
Yeah.
that things towards the ultimate sustainer or life, towards the ultimate existence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't quite get all of that. I feel like I got little pieces of it. But I'll say that what the source we're going to do is going to make you very happy. Okay, because I think it's along those lines. Just want to read what Tamar wrote. Tamar says, Bechira, I've heard some idea, I don't remember, regarding the idea that we and Hashem both have agency of choice. Okay, good. This is going to be part of it also. Okay, so yeah.
I was thinking, related to what you said about like thanks in general.
Yeah.
About like understanding God. You said the three levels in the last one, like total subjugation,
Yeah.
understand, whatever. So I guess it's like there's some kind of similarity between us and God insofar as we're both living. Like I guess like that's something that you can kind of grab onto to properly thank God for. Like that's something that you, I guess, is literally the deepest part, I guess, because it's what makes you deeper.
Yeah.
And so you can kind of grasp onto that.
Okay, good. All right. I like that as well. I'm gonna hold my comments, my elaboration on that until we examine the source that I have here. But I think each of you has an element of this one source that we're gonna learn. You'll see. Yeah, Isaiah.
Yeah, I'm not sure if anyone said this, but the thought that I had was that like maybe the thing about being alive that allows you to praise God is like you go from a state of like not having what you need to having what you need.
Mm-hmm.
And the source of that change of state is like Hashem. Hashem like does things for you or like causes things to happen that like give you what you need in the world. And like when you're not living, like you can't appreciate, like you need to have that change in state in order to appreciate good. Like you can't like give thanks for good without the possibility of not having the good. So that's like in a living context where you can have that possibility.
Okay, so you're saying that there is something that is that anything you thank God for is going to have to be in the context of being alive, and therefore the ultimate thanks is going to have to is going to be about the fact of being living, or are you saying something else?
It's only possible from people who are living.
It's only possible from people. Okay, so that works for that. Are you also explaining what it means that God is alive and how the fact that God is alive is necessitates us giving thanks to him because of our life?
I guess I was saying like he's the cause of those changes.
Mm-hmm.
And so the living is like, well, I don't know how God should cause the changes because obviously he doesn't change. But like the living aspect of God is that like he brings forth good into life.
Okay.
Into our lives.
Right. Okay. So let's do this. So I wanted to find. What are you looking? If the Rambam.
The Rambam.
Yeah.
Hayasham in Parak is the Sukkah
Right.
Torah. It says in this is called Hayasham, not Hayasham.
Right. Yeah. We were talking about this before. Right. But what was that?
This.
Yeah, because of this, yeah. But he doesn't explain though what it means that God.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I was gonna say, first place I wanted to look is the Rambam, right? And I couldn't find a place where the Rambam talks about it. So we're gonna go for a Maimonidean answer. the enemy of the Rambam. No, the Albo, Sefer HaIkarim. He's not the enemy of the Rambam, but disagrees with the Rambam on Ikarim. So Sefer HaIkarim has a really nice treatment of this topic, okay? And I have here, I want to read the Hebrew, but I put the English because I know this is just the ChatGPT English, okay? So Shnei Mine HaTa'arim Halalu She'amarnu Shi'tor Behem Hashem Yisbarach Shehem HaTa'arim Asher Mitzad Atzmo V'HaTa'arim Asher Mitzad Pulosav. So he says there's two types of attributes of God. God doesn't have any attributes, obviously, but attributes in terms of when we attribute things to God, there are characteristics that refer to God's essence, and there are characteristics that refer to God's actions. Okay. So there are certain attributes that the external meaning refers to God's actions. It's obvious that when we say God is merciful, we're referring to his actions. Okay, chanun, etc. All right. There are other attributes that it's clear we're talking about God's essence. Saying God is one, God is eternal, right? Saying God is one is not referring to God doing things, right? It's God himself. Okay, whereas like when I start off my tefilah course, I always ask my students to define. I said, well, how would you define Hashem? So they always say stuff about like, oh, he's the creator, like he's the giver of the Torah. I say, no, don't tell me his resume. Tell me who he is. Okay. So meaning that there's God's actions, but then there's who he is, even if he didn't do any actions. Then okay. But then he says, so again, like the Rambam, he holds that when we say God is one, we don't really mean one. We really mean a negative quality, which is he is not plural or does not partake of multiplicity. Or when we say he's eternal, we can't grasp eternality. We really mean he does not partake of time or change or finitude in any way, okay? So those are the two categories of attributes, okay? But then he says, okay, v'yesh toarim she'inyan mesupak bahem im yitur behem mitzad atzmo o mitzad ha'pu'ulos hamnishachos mimeno. There are other attributes where it's unclear whether we are describing God's essence or his actions. The actions that emanate from him. Therefore, we need to understand a method for how to understand these attributes. Okay. So he's going to explain a couple of them, and then you're going to use that for all the rest of them. Okay. So these are the ambiguous ones. All right. So thankfully, guess what two of them are? Hatov and Chai. Okay, so first he's going to do Hatov, which we're going to circle back to because that's at the end of the Shemona Esrei, or at the end of Modim. So he says, V'nomar, ki yomar alav yisbarach shehu tov. Okay, when we say about God that he is good, you should understand good in the two ways we've said. V'zeh, namely, ki mitzad pu'ulosav, by virtue of his actions, amnam ye'amer alav shu tov mitzad shekol hatovos nimshachos mimenu. We call him good because all the goods come from him. V'efshar shemashech hatov ela mimishu tov, and good can only come from being who is good. Amar hakasuv tov Hashem lakol. That's why the pasuk says God is good to all. Aval kashitura mitzad atzmo. But if you're describing God as God's essence and saying he is the good, then you have to understand it as a negation. We call him good because his essence is free from all deficiency. Because there is no, I know ChatGPT translates it as potentiality, which I actually do like. But that's a very, very complicated idea of Aristotelian potentiality. Oh, yeah. Okay, but there's no, God is pure actuality. Okay. As you say in the old days, put that in your pipe and smoke it. Okay, you got to think about that on your own time. Okay, and that's why God does not undergo any change or privation. Because all privations are evil. This is the Rambam's theory of evil in the Moreh Nevuchim 3:10. Okay, so that's the derech. The derech is with these ambiguous. Okay, it's a very simple derech. With the attributes of essence, you understand them as negations because you don't know anything about God's essence. Attributes of action, you understand them to be about God's actions. Ambiguous attributes, you understand them both ways, okay? Is that you interpret them about the actions and also about his essence as negations, okay?
Have to do with that.
Yes, okay, we'll get to that later, okay. Okay, then he says, "V'nimsa bakasuv shitarehu b'shuhu tov milush ne'etzan." We find that the psukim describe him through both of these ways. Amar tov ata umetiv lamdeni chukecha. We say, you are good and you do good. Teach me your statutes. Amar tov ata b'bchinas shu tov mitzad atzmo. Amar metiv b'bchinas hatov shemshach zimenu. So you are good obviously is referring to the essence, and you are metiv is referring to his actions. Again, when you ever say hatov metiv, then you have this in mind. Okay, so that's the derech for understanding these double actions or these double attributes. Okay, so then this font is small because it's all the stuff we're skipping, but I put it here in case we need it. Okay, now we go to alive. Okay, so ukishiyomar alav chai. When we say that God is alive, imitzad pulosav. If we are talking about his actions, hakavana lomar shachayim nimshachim mimenu, then we mean that life comes from him. Ulezeh yeh chai b'hakreach, and therefore he must be alive. Because life can't come from him if he's not alive. Okay, whatever that means. I don't know. I mean, to me, I still am comfortable with the idea. If you asked me before I went through any of this, what does it mean that God is alive? I'd say it means that he exists. And that, if you ask what it means, like God is the life of worlds, it means that he gives existence to other things. And life means like existence, Okay, but so I don't know if that's what he means, but he's saying that, yeah.
We must be alive because life can only come from or God must be. God
must have be able to be called living because life comes from him. The easier example is we don't know what what we mean when we say that God is wise. Like we don't understand God's chachma, but when we say God is wise by virtue of his actions, we mean that all the chachma we see in the universe comes from him. So he must be a source of that chachma, even though we don't understand how we get that, how it's sourced, yeah, it's ethically sourced. Okay, so then he says, but if you're talking about God's essence, when you say he's alive, then you should understand it as a negation. Okay, so the translation here is better than what I'm going to translate. We describe him as alive, to indicate that what emanates from him does not emanate in the manner that light emanates from a candle or heat from a fire. That those things act, so to speak, not with knowledge or will. I mean, fire doesn't say, "Oh, I'm going to heat now," or the light doesn't say, "Ooh, watch me make light." It just does it. It just automatically comes from its nature, and there's no knowledge involved. Okay. And shiyushpa mehem zulas b'yidiyah v'ratzon b'mash yishpia. Ki hu yisala amnam yashpia al tzad hayoser nivchar mimin ha'mashpiyim. God does actions, or he, how do they say this here? Causes emanation. I mean, we use the word yashpia. I'm not sure. I don't know Albo's framework enough to say what that means, but I mean, it's talking about like God doing things. Okay, so God causes emanation in the most chosen manner, in the choicest manner. Okay, in the choicest manner, the best manner of all causes of emanation. Shehu yisbarach mashpia biyadiyah v'raton shehu hachai. God does actions with knowledge and ratzon, will, that is alive. V'chein hu yada.
Is saying what chai is in God's essence.
Yeah. No. Sorry. Is he saying that? I mean, you mean like including the definition in the thing? I think it'll be clear when we get to the end. Okay. He also knows what he is emanating and has control over it and wants it. Because if that weren't the case, then it wouldn't have happened. So those are the three qualities, is that what God does is with knowledge and ratzon and ability, just as from something that is alive. So this is very close to what you're saying by dynamic. Okay, meaning it is a little bit more than dynamic though, because it means that you're acting, because the opposite of dynamic is static, right? I don't know, what would you call the nature of fire or giving off heat or light, like a candle giving off light? It's not like active. So you want to say passive, but it's not passive. Automatic,
Memela.
Yeah, memela, right, exactly, right? It's like it's an automatic thing. So with God, it is it's with knowledge and ratzon and control, okay?
It's like pure activeness?
Yeah, it's pure
action,
activeness. Yeah,
pure
exactly. Yeah,
action.
if you took the idea of like action, right? It is the ultimate expression of action. But remember, we can't know what this means in positive terms. It's just negation. Okay, and he says that, and he says the Indian dak me'od yatzar hadibur bo. So this is a very very nuanced, subtle idea that there's no words for. V'hakvana bo havanas inyan. Just focus on understanding the idea. He has ability that is not limited. God doesn't wear himself out when he is acting. And he wills his actions. He doesn't reject or abandon or forget to act. And he knows what he's enacting. He's not blind or ignorant from what he's acting. And he is not without knowledge of what the effects are. Because of this, we say that God is alive. Because a living being grasps what he's doing, and he wants it. That's the thing. He's not acting out of his nature. Okay, if you really want to look into this, excellent chapters of Sefer Haikarim are book 2, chapters 1 and 2, where he basically says there's only two ways to act: by compulsion, or like nature, or as by bechira. And then he says, well, you can't say that God acts by compulsion because that's an inferior form of action, and God wouldn't be able to control it, and he wouldn't be able to do opposite things if he's like compelled, because you can't have like a fire that heats and cools, but then if you say God has bechira, then that's also problematic, because bechira would seem to stem from a dual nature, so you can't say that. So how does God act? So he ends up saying that we call God rotze only to negate automatic action. And so it's just a negation. But he says it very eloquently. He gives a lot of good examples here. Okay. And then he concludes like this. He says, V'yashuvu elu ha'arba ta'arim shu chai chacham v'rote yachol. We only did 2 of those. We did, he didn't say tov. So there are 5. Tov, chai, chacham, rote, yachol. Okay. So, all 4 of these things, el kavana achas, have one intention, sholalius, which is negative. As we said, that's how you should understand all attributes that are ascribed to God's essence. You should understand them as negations. Whatever they are. All negative attributes are correct for him. There's no harm in negating more things from God. Okay, you can negate all you want. Or to say that they are limitless. As long as you're not negating things in a way that implies a defect in him. That's why he makes as one of his shirashim, not the Ram does not do this explicitly, but the Sefer HaIkarim says one of the what he calls the shirashim of the first ikar of God's existence is that God is void of imperfections. He's free from deficiencies. Lirmos el ha'inyan hazeh shekasavnu lefi das haRambam zal, klomer she'to'arim ha'chiyuvim nimnaim bechuko. So this is according to the Rambam, that the positive attributes are impossible for God, and you should negate them because they are deficiency. Okay, so that's the Sefer HaIkarim. Okay, so the question is, does this help us?
Wait, but
yeah,
the negative part only applies to his essence, not the actual actions.
Right. So let's just summarize here. Okay. So according to Sefer HaIkarim, the word chai applies in 2 ways. Okay. If you're describing God's actions, it refers to the fact that he is the source of life. If you're referring to God's essence, then it should be understood as a negation, namely negating automatic action from him and acknowledging, negatively, that he acts with knowledge, will, and control. Okay, so that's what we mean by living. Okay, so now the question is, does this help us at all with the first question? And which of these two meanings would we apply there?
Almost like it's
Probably the first one.
That's what I would think.
What did the John say again?
He said, yeah, I'm gonna just copy and paste it and move it down here. There we go. Right. So the key phrase that we're trying to understand here is we are alive, you are alive, and we therefore gratefully acknowledge you. The living who bow to who gives thanks, the living who bow to the life of worlds. So it sounds like the first one, right? Because it's the life of worlds and the source of life, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So does this help us?
Well, it sounds like the thinking is coming from, I guess, the first definition which would refer to it. If living beings means like free will beings, then the thinking is coming from our free will.
Okay,
Free will.
so that's the other direction you could take, okay, which is, and this is what Tamara was getting at, which is there an argument you can make that God, because God is knowing and willing and has bechira, and we are knowing and willing and have bechira, that somehow necessitates that we thank him?
That'd be a little weird, because then thinking it would be
Or acknowledging him, whatever, being motive to him.
because thinking then would be the epitome of expressing our free will, but then are we then thanking God for giving us the ability to think?
Ah, I'm glad you said it that way. Where do we thank God for the ability to thank him? I forgot if I mentioned this last time.
Thank God for
the ability to thank him. I don't think I mentioned it last time. What? Nope. It's in Modim de Rabbanan. Okay, now I know Modim de Rabbanan is there's different Girsals, but in our Nusach, we say like this. Okay, I gotta go all the way down.
But yeah, you did mention that.
I did mention that. Okay, yeah, right. Yeah, I threw that in there. I'll show it to you though. Okay. Yeah, right. So Modim anachnu lach. Okay, we gratefully acknowledge you. Okay, and then in the translation you can see it better. We gratefully acknowledge you. Okay, and then what are we acknowledging? All this stuff here. And we're doing it for our grateful acknowledgement of you. So we thank you for the ability to thank you, which is a little interesting here. Okay. I'm going to say I'm silently panicking. You can't see it on my face, but I'm silently panicking because I forgot the idea that Ken and I came up with. Okay, but there's a way. Have you ever had this experience of reading an idea from the Rav, and you definitely are understanding it when you get it, and then someone says, say it over, but because you can't talk like the Rav, then like if you try to say it, it falls woefully short. I don't know if you've ever had that experience. That's what it's like to talk with Ken. Okay, is that Ken has a very, very like almost, it's not poetic in the sense that the Rav is poetic, but a very like, I don't know, just artful way of expressing ideas. And like we had this great idea last night, and I'm not remembering all the steps, but I'm going to throw out one word. Okay, there's a modern term for the type of state that you're in when you have knowledge and awareness and control, and that's how you act. And I don't think the word existed back then, the English word. And it's a quality that we say that we have, which is consciousness. Okay, meaning consciousness implies like you have awareness and knowledge, and obviously you can be conscious and paralyzed, right? But I'm saying like when I say acting consciously, like you're acting consciously means that you have knowledge of what you're doing, you will it, you're not under compulsion, and you are controlling your actions, as opposed to an unconscious action, which is stemming from something that is not in your control or not in your awareness. Okay, so is there an idea here that because God, so to speak, is conscious, okay, and I'm using conscious in the way the Sefer העיקרים is using it, that he is Rotze and Yodea and Yachol, okay, and we are conscious, does that somehow lead to an argument that we should give Hodah to him?
well, consciousness is what makes the living beings specifically different than the dead.
Yes. Okay, good. Okay, good. So consciousness is what makes the living different from the dead. Okay. And not only that, but I'll just give you another little raya that that there is a focus on consciousness here. Say again?
Oh.
At the end?
Yeah.
Yeah, that could be one also, but I was gonna say, where do we refer to unconsciousness in Modim? Okay, so we didn't read this last time, but the Abudarham says, okay, if I say al nishmas al yeah nifash al chaynam sirim b'tagav al nishmasei habkudos lach, right? Do you associate to any pasuk al nishmasei habkudos lach? Yeah, biadacha avkid ruchi, right? So that's where the Abudarham says that the phrase comes from. He says, where is it?
That's what we don't say before Mishmar, sorry, Mar.
Biadacha avkid ruchi?
Yeah, because it's in the thing, the Baruch. I don't know what it's called, the Baruch.
Oh,
I forgot what it's called because I never said.
Yeah, right. The collection of psukim. Yeah, right. So and I think people have this minhag to say it in Kriyas Shema Hamita, I think. So biadacha avkid ruchi, he says, yeah, al nishmasei habkudos lach, our neshamos that we entrust to you. Okay. If you listen to the Sunday shiur I gave on Elokai Neshama, then I talk there about the idea of consciousness also. But the reality is that when he says the human soul is entrusted to him every night until we awaken. Okay, so this is not an absolute raya, but like we are referencing this idea here. Okay, so and as I'm just going back to what Chaim said, or as what Moshe said, is I said Chaim because we're talking about Chaim. Okay, is that it's consciousness, which is the thing that the dead don't have. Okay, right? So hold on just a second here. I'm really trying. I'm going to try my best to like express this idea. Okay, if it's incoherent, then blame me. Okay, for forgetting Ken's idea. So where I'm just trying to find my spot here. Where I put it up here. Yeah. Okay. So we start off. We have this weird quality of consciousness. Okay. And even today, like I feel like I didn't do a survey or anything like that. Consciousness is one of the things that is like the biggest mysteries in science, right? And in philosophy also, right? And this gets into whole issues of like neurology and philosophy and metaphysics and AI of like, what does it mean to be conscious? But we can't deny the fact that we have consciousness, you know? Like even if you wanted to like argue with Descartes, I think therefore I am. I mean, you are conscious, you know, like, right? So you start off with this awareness that you have consciousness, okay? Okay, I'm going to express this in Ken's way, but I have to turn off the recording, so this is going to be controversial. So we're all confronted with this brute fact of our own consciousness, okay? And it is this mystery, okay? But then we become aware of the fact that we have consciousness, which is what allows us to experience all the other goods in life that we have, okay? And the idea. Should have written it down. Where I'm trying, I'll describe where I'm trying to go, and maybe it'll come to me here. Is that that if you stick just with this idea of your own consciousness, you're going to get kind of stuck in like this solipsistic world where I'm only seeing things like egoistically, like in terms of me, okay? And that really is, if you think about like just the standard idea of thanks, you know, thanks is designed to break you out of a purely egoistic framework, right? Getting you to acknowledge that the good came to me from outside, you know? But what Modim is trying to get you to do is it's trying to bring you from this solipsistic, egoistic way where the only thing I recognize is myself, and it's trying to get you to realize that there is an entire, not getting it, it's collapsing right before me. All right, I'll show you the destination. The destination is we mapped out a way in Modim where this leads you to the conclusion of Modim, which is recognizing that all living beings have this quality, and that it comes from God, and I'm just totally forgetting the idea.
Well, it's
Yeah. Go ahead.
That you're more so that normally when you say thank you to others, you're just recognizing that person's action, but you're recognizing that they did good.
Right. But not them. Oh, sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Okay. But with God, it's much more than that, because we're not just recognizing the fact that God did good to us, but the source of our appreciation for that good is
Yes. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah, that was the second step here, which is that you are not just experiencing good, but you have the ability to recognize that very experience of receiving of the good and to reflect on it. And then from there, you recognize that God is the source of all good. And that becomes a source of objective knowledge, about God himself. I just want to insert, I saw a hand there, but I just want to insert, we did connect this. So Moshe made the observation to me last week that of all the brachos in the Shemona Esrei, all of them have the formula of talking about God's action and a good. Okay, chonein hadas, magin Avraham, mechaye hamesim, hanun hamarbeis lo. But there are two exceptions: hakel kadosh and hatov shimcha ulchan na'ay lahodos. Okay, those are the only two that don't describe God doing things. Hakel kadosh means the transcendent God. That God himself is separate from everything, or the power that is transcendent, however you want to say, hakel kadosh. And then hatov shimcha, the good one is his name, and it is good for us to give thanks to him. But it's not describing what God does. And what we wanted to what we were trying to get to, and I'm gonna have to go over this idea again with Ken and get it for next time, is that what Modim is trying to get you to do is trying to build a bridge, and what this idea in the Abudarham is trying to do is trying to get you to build a bridge from the fact that I am alive, which means I have bechira and yediyah and ratzon, and I experience all these goods. And these things come from a source that kaviyachol has those qualities, and that I have the ability to recognize that, and that's how I should use that ability, is to recognize God as the source of my goodness, of all the goodness in my life. And it's not just all the goodness in my life. It is, in other words, the standard way of thanking someone is you thank them for a particular good. But here you're thanking God for the substratum, for the life itself, and the ability, the life itself, not just the biological life, but the life that we've defined here, the consciousness and the idea and the bechira that allows you to engage in thanking God for this stuff and seeking that knowledge. I'm not expressing it well. Yeah, Ayala?
I was just thinking about what you're saying, that when we thank other people, it's like a recognition that the good is from them. But I feel like part of thanking other people is also like the acknowledgement that they're another conscious, intentional being. Because we don't thank a table for
exactly
whatever,
That's a good point. That is a really good point, right? Is we only thank other beings that are chai, right? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. What were you gonna say though, Moshe?
For your what is the Chaim at the end?
Yeah.
That refers to all living creatures?
No, that refers to all human beings, I'm saying.
All living creatures.
Yeah, all human beings, I'm saying. Yeah. Right, because only we have this quality of yediyah and raton and yicholes to be able to.
The idea is saying we're high, but you're also high.
Right.
It's dependent on that, right?
Yeah, that's the step that I'm missing, and it's an early step. That's why the rest is not following from this.
What's the step?
The step is the thing that is what the Abudarham said, is that that because we are alive and you are alive, therefore we thank you. And I think what Ayala said is really good. I think that's a big part of it, is that that we don't thank beings that are not conscious. We only thank beings that are conscious. But what I'm missing here is what about this argument is compelling you to give thanks to God? Yeah.
I mean, in a sense, like you could say it's like a tova that God naturally gave us an identification with God. So like from an egoistic person,
that's interesting
perspective, it's going to help you branch out.
Right. So I toyed with a couple ideas along those lines. One is that God gave us this metaphor that he describes himself as chai, and that allows you to have this bridge of identification. That's the psychological route, let's call it. Yeah. Another bridge another possibility I went to is if chai, and we didn't even explore this tonight, if chai is a reference to God's actions. So what does the Rambam say about why God action, why God is called by his actions. What's the purpose? Why all the Nevi'im call God by his actions?
For
For the mitzvah halach Abudarham, so we can emulate God. So I was trying to think, is there a way to say that since God gives us life, does that somehow lead to us giving Hodah to him? So I want to explore that also. The other direction I wanted to explore was that there is a yearning when gaining knowledge about anything to see the source of the thing. So the most fundamental fact about you is that you are alive. You know, everything else that you experience is in that. Maybe I'm going back to the consciousness idea. So seeking the source of that is going to be a bridge to recognizing God as high in the sense that he's the source of life. Yeah, Isaiah? And then we have to stop soon.
Maybe like maybe one bridge is that like God gave you this faculty of like consciousness that allows you to perceive things.
Yeah.
And so maybe the thing that you like it's a higher use of that very faculty to use it to perceive the being that like gave you the faculty itself. And
right. That's exactly what we were trying to say. I'm just not putting together that the faculty that you're using to recognize God gave you this faculty, which is uniquely enables you to recognize him.
It's because you don't have like a claim on that faculty. Like you owe it entirely to.
Right. It comes from God. Right.
That source of it.
Yeah.
But then emphasizing that God is alive is showing that we are alive and able to give things because your essence is such that you are alive.
Right. Yeah. You know, I got to stop now because Maravi's starting. But so let's continue thinking about this. I do think there's potential here, and I got to just go ask. I got to work on it with Ken again and refine it because it was such a juicy idea. I mean, we're dancing around it, but we'll have to get it next time. And then what I want to do next time is going to be the last shiur before I go on a 1 week break at least. So I want to do the chasima of Hatov Shim Chalachanai Lahodos, and there's a surprising idea there also. Okay, so until next time. All right, good night, everyone.